Welcome back to another lens review. This time I have the Canon 70-200mm f4L. This is currently the most affordable L lens. It was released some time ago in 1999, but you can still buy it now. It's still in production, although we do have some variations in the models that Canon offer. Key features are on the screen for you to have a look at, so you can pause that if you want. As you'd expect from an L series lens, you do have good build quality overall. Most of the case is metal. The only exception to that is the switches on the side, which are plastic. Both the focus and the zoom ring have very smooth action on them. There's no juddering at all. Zoom and the focus are internal, so there's nothing to extend, and the filter, which is 67mm, that doesn't rotate on focus. There is one area to point out, and that is that you don't have the seal on the back of the lens that you might have seen on some of the L series lenses. That's because this lens isn't classed as weather sealed. That's something I'll get onto a bit later on. Here's your focus limiter, 1.2 meters, which is the minimum focus distance, and then you have a 3-meter switch. That will make your focus speeds quite a bit quicker because it will have a shorter range to work through. And there's your button for the AF and manual focus. Though it's not a super light lens, it is fairly manageable, particularly if you compare it to the f2.8. You don't get the tripod collar with this out of the box. That is an add-on and it's fairly expensive. I checked on that online, around about 130, but you can get third-party ones for quite a bit less. I'm not sure if the lack of sealing is going to be an issue for people. The f4IS, the version which is still in production, that does have weather sealing on it. The ET74 is the lens hood which is supplied with it, and it's quite a large hood, quite deep, and it feels quite well made considering the plastics are fairly thick. There's your bayonet fitting on the underside. I found it pretty durable hood, better than some of the cheaper hoods that I've used. There's a felt lining on the inside which helps reduce any reflections which might come back into the lens. Quick shot showing you with the hood on. As you can see, it obviously does extend the length, but it can also offer a bit of protection for the front element. And when it's reversed, you're not going to be able to get to the focus ring when you have the hood on reverse though. With the ultrasonic motor, you have full-time manual autofocus at any time, so you can turn that and you won't have any problems with the motor engaging. There is a clutch in there. Should be able to hear from that clip that it is very quiet and it's also fast. You're not going to be unhappy with the focus speeds with this, and if you flip the limiter switch, that will just keep the range down, which will avoid any hunting issues. So nice performance as far as the focus goes. Moving on to my normal tests, we're going to start off at 70mm. I'm going to stop the lens down. You can see there is a bit of distortion, not too strong, but the vignetting, which is apparent wide open, does decrease quite a bit by the time you've stopped it down to around f5.6 and f8. Sharpness in the middle is very good, right from f4. There is an improvement when you stop it down, but not much, and the corners are not bad at all, and they gradually improve once you stop the lens down to f5.6 and to f8. I did set it to 135, but it's reading 131. Anyway, we're fairly close on the mid-range, and you can see that distortion is a bit stronger, a bit more pincushion, but also that the vignetting is also a little bit stronger as well. As far as the middle is good, straight from f4, and that gradually improves when you stop down. A little bit more extra fine detail, and the contrast does pick up. As far as the corner performance goes, it's slight softness at the extreme corners and edges, and then once you stop the lens down, a stop from f4 to 5.6, that improves, and it's really good across the frame at f8. Moving up to 200mm, what you'll notice is that there is a fair amount of distortion in the lens. The pincushion has got quite a bit stronger, and you can also see that the vignetting is stronger, wide open. Again, that improves stopping the lens down, and it really is a non-issue once you've gone down to around about f5.6. Resolution in the middle is quite good at f4. It does pick up once you've stopped down to f5, 6 and 8, but I would consider it to be very usable at 200mm wide open. For corner performance, the corners have a bit of softness wide open, and in the mid sections it's not quite as good at f4, but once you've taken it down to f5, 6 and f8 is another big jump. You'll get good image quality across the frame, stopping the lens down from f8 or a bit lower. Did some test shots to look at the outer focus areas to see what they looked like, and at 70mm it's not bad, it's pretty good. Typical with these types of lenses, You get a better performance once you zoom in to the longer focal lengths, but it's perfectly okay at the 70mm to 100mm mark. They're relatively diffused, the areas in the background and the outlining is very minor. Once you go up to 200mm, it's quite a bit softer, the outlining is even more diffused. I'm quite pleased with the performance of the lens in most ways, and even stopping it down, you'll find that it's still quite diffused and pleasant to the eye. Typically these lenses do quite well, but there are some exceptions which I have seen. Another example showing you from 200mm f4 and stopping down to f5.6, the difference. There is a difference in performance, a bit more resolution once you stop the lens down, but to me I find it very decent even at the f4 aperture. Quick example showing you from the 70 to the 200mm. Don't assume that these lenses are just for action or people photography. They work quite well for landscapes and scenics because you're able to pick out details in the distance, and there's a big difference between having, say, a 70mm or 100mm lens and having a 200mm in terms of your field of view is much narrower. This is one of the more popular lenses for scenic and landscape photography because generally you're not going to need that f2.8 aperture. It's going to be a lot lighter to carry this one around than the f2.8, and if you don't need that extra speed, then you're really not going to have any need for the additional size and weight that that lens brings. Carrying on with more test shots, I just took a few here just to show you some differences that you can see. The distortion can sometimes be a problem when you have the pin cushion, and that is fairly easy to correct. Things like subject isolation, generally not going to be a problem even on a crop sensor camera because of the perspective, and that's not to do with the lens, that's the distance that you are from your subject. It's not just for portraits, although they are quite popular for that. It really comes down to the type of photography that you do. This is a general purpose lens, and I would say it suits candid photography, landscape and also portraiture quite well. It's probably the second most important lens to get because it gives you that additional reach that you don't have with a normal standard zoom. Thought I'd take a look at the chromatic aberration in real world, and I've zoomed in quite far on this. You're looking at around 200%, so this may not be something you will see in a lot of shots, and it's most part fairly well controlled. The levels of chromatic aberration are fairly low considering, and it's quite an easy fix in post-processing to get rid of that. Flare performance was a bit below average. It does tend to reduce contrast significantly depending on where the sun is, so I did expect a slightly better performance on that, so do make sure you use the lens hood. In some cases f4 might be fast enough for interior shots. If you're doing sports and action, you're obviously going to want a faster aperture, perhaps the f2.8 or an even faster prime, but it is quite a good lens for general purpose use, not just sports, portraits and general scenic photography. Price on this lens is acceptable, I think, for the quality that you get, but there is a big difference by the time you go up to the f4IS version. It's more than double the price, and personally I think I would start to look at third-party options. If the IS version was about $300 to $350 more, I think that would be fine. You expect to pay more, but I think double or more is a little bit over the top for pricing. The only real drawback to the lens is going to be that distortion. The pin cushion at 200mm is quite strong. The optics are good across most of the range, although you will want to stop the lens down at 200mm to get sharpness across the frame. Do stick around, I'll be doing more lens reviews in the future, and thanks for watching.